Hello again, YouTube. Been quite a while since my last appearance around these parts, but I'm back, and now we're entering new territory for the channel. I'm not going to permanently rule out a return to my collection videos at some point, but I wasn't particularly impressed with my current setup for those. So, at the suggestion of friends, I'm going to branch out into reviews, and I'm going to pop my video review cherry with the 1988 Stan Winston directed Halloween season creature feature classic, Pumpkinhead. Keep away from Pumpkinhead, unless you're tired of living. His enemies are mostly dead. He's mean and unforgiving. Laugh at him and you're undone. But in some dreadful fashion, vengeance he considers fun, and plans it with a passion. Time will not erase or blot a plot that he has brewing. It's when you think that he's forgot, he'll conjure your undoing. Bolted doors and windows barred, guard dogs prowling in the yard. Won't protect you in your bed, nothing will, from Pumpkinhead. So goes the Ed Justin poem, which inspired producer Billy Blake to use as the title for a script by writers Gary Geraci and Mark Patrick Carducci, themselves inspired by their 1970s Super 8 home movie, The Seven Gargoyles of Satan, featuring the concept of demons that represented each of man's sins. Geraci and Carducci were also massive fans of the creature from the Black Lagoon. DEG, the company formed by Dino De Laurentiis, initially hired the legendary Stan Winston as the effects man for the project, which Winston decided would make for a perfect directorial debut, having been the second unit director of James Cameron's Aliens beforehand. DEG went out of business 3 weeks before the film's intended release on Halloween of 1988, prompting United Artists to step in as distributor, and thus affecting the way the film was overall released. The poster featuring Pumpkinhead's hands clutching a pumpkin was prepared by DEG and features this original release date. United Artists also originally considered Vengeance the Demon, or Demon Vengeance, as early titles, but thankfully, they went with the preference of Mr. Blake. Pumpkinhead begins in 1957, with the Harley family bedding down for the night, but the restless patriarch, Tom, draws the concern of his young son, Ed. Mother Ellie does her best to calm the child, but it's not long before a man named Clayton Weller comes beating on their door, desperately pleading for his life. Tom refuses to let the man in, and a confused Ed looks out the window right as Weller meets his end at the hands of a ghoulish figure. In the present, Ed lives as a widower with his own young son, Billy. One day, a group of city kids on their way to a cabin stroll by Ed's general store. While he goes to collect another customer's farm feed, one of the teens, asshole-ish Joel, accidentally hits young Billy with his dirt bike, mortally wounding the boy. Joel, afraid of violating his probation, and worse, flees the scene with most of the others, except his brother, Steve, who remains behind to attempt to explain what happened to Billy upon Ed's return. Unsurprisingly to the audience, and unfortunately for the teens, Ed's reaction to his son's death prompts him to seek out the old witch, Haggis, and at first, Ed wants her to resurrect Billy. Unable to fulfill the request, Ed then recalls the creature he glimpsed as a boy, and Haggis informs him it's the demon of vengeance, Pumpkinhead, who will avenge Billy's death, but at a terrible price, Ed's own life and soul. Dramatically speaking, Pumpkinhead is remembered so fondly because it makes our main character a middle-aged hillbilly farmer, played by Lance Henriksen, rather than the bunch of teens that he sets in the sights of the titular creature. His emotional connection with his son, and the grief he expresses when he passes, is palpable, and while the film works where similar creature features may flounder. As Pumpkinhead mows through the cast of victims, Ed discovers he shares a psychic link with the creature, gaining a front row seat to the carnage, driving him to try and rectify his decision. The longer Pumpkinhead exists, though, the more connected he and Harley gradually become, but therein may lie the key to the demon's defeat. A theme of culture clash is also present in Pumpkinhead, as the kids from the city are treated like invaders upon the turf of the country locals, which is a hallmark of the classic monster movie. As alluded to before, this is Lance Henriksen's show, hands down. But he isn't alone in terms of quality, because everyone else is up to par and then some as well. A pair of fake buck teeth worn by Lance were intended to give him a sense of rural character. Lance also ad-libbed the dialogue about his grandma washing his hands as a boy, something that Lance himself remembered from childhood. Lance acquired a lot of his own props for use in the role, such as the shotgun Ed uses. which was originally used in World War II, as well as the silver dollars he pays Haggis. For the teens, we have ourselves a proto I Know What You Did Last Summer, something that will become even more evident with this film's sequel. John D'Aquino as Joel is very much in the same vein of Ryan Phillippe's Barry character, but the lovely Kimberly Ross as Joel's girlfriend, Kim, very original there guys, gets lost in the shuffle here and doesn't quite compare to her counterpart in Sarah Michelle Gellar's Helen. Fulfilling the role of heroine and hero are Cynthia Bain as Tracy and Jeff East as Chris. Chris is definitely cut from the same cloth as Freddie Prinze Jr.'s Ray, affable and willing to right the group's wrongs. Bain matches East's likability and determination for justice, reminding me, physically anyway, of Linda Hamilton in The Terminator. But oh man, do I wish that Jennifer Love Hewitt had been 10 years older, and thus the right age for Tracy when this film was made. Yes, sirree, Bob. Anyways, having Julie James as the final girl against Pumpkinhead would have been preferable to a dude in a fisherman getup, but I digress. Dispensing with the comparisons to I Know What You Did Last Summer for a minute, this film diverges with the character of Joel's brother Steve, played by Joel Hoffman. Go figure. Unlike Kimberly Ross playing a character named Kim, they avoid repeating it by not having Joel Hoffman play the Joel character. Kudos to the casting director. But back to Steve. First, it seems like he may be the only likable one of the bunch, or at the very least, he's trying by remaining behind to explain what happened. His girlfriend, Maggie, played by Carrie Remsen, also attempts to alert the others to the coming catastrophe with Billy by trying to keep him from straying into the path of Joel's dirt bike. And when the crash occurs and Billy meets his fate, Maggie becomes overwhelmed by grief, somewhat fulfilling a stereotype of horror films with a young woman who's lost her senses. But here, we thankfully never find her anywhere near as annoying as some classic and even contemporary examples, both then and now. Last, but certainly not least, are Brian Brimmer and Florence Schaefer. Brimmer makes an impression as the mischievous Bunt Wallace, at first believing Pumpkinhead to be nothing more than a fable, then morbidly curious and determined to help the survivors of Pumpkinhead's wrath. And Schaefer is iconic as the withered and sinister witch, Haggis, who unleashes the demon upon the world, per Ed Harley's request, of course. With Stan Winston in the director's chair, he decided to let the other fellows working under him at the time tackle all the effects. This included Tom Woodruff Jr. and Alec Gillis, alongside Shane Mahan and John Rosengrant. Woodruff and Gillis were only a few years away from forming their own studio in ADI, aka Amalgamated Dynamics Incorporated, which was during the production of the original Tremors. Shane Mahan was primarily responsible for the stellar makeup job on Florence Schaefer as the witch Haggis. Woodruff also was the suit performer for Pumpkinhead, something he would continue to practice for various films afterwards, including later Alien sequels and the AVP films. Though it was producer Billy Blake who wanted Pumpkinhead as the title of the final film, Woodruff and company justified it by having the creature emerge from a patch of dead pumpkins, and his skin itself was meant to evoke old, rotting gourds. Gillis remembers, much to his amusement, that at first hearing the name Pumpkinhead, they weren't sure if Stan meant a literal jack-o'-lantern head or something else. He, of course, cleared up any confusion. The musical score by Richard Stone puts great emphasis on the country twang of the region, but also has a haunting, looming quality to it, almost illustrating Pumpkinhead's grip tightening on his group of victims as he closes in on them, one by one. The otherworldly direction of photography by Bojan Bozelli evokes just the right amount of universal classic goodness, with plenty of fog and moonlit trees to go around. But a bit of Poltergeist and Evil Dead 2 is thrown in there too, with a backlit strobe light effect accompanying Pumpkinhead on his rampage. Lance Henriksen claims that the scene in the script where Ed hallucinates the corpse of his son, Billy, rising up from under his blanket to ask him what he was doing, is what convinced him to say yes to the project, as reading it alone at night sent a chill up his spine. Keep a keen eye and ear out, as Pumpkinhead's voice can be heard in the scene where Steve shuts the window and right before Maggie goes outside. Pumpkinhead can also be seen going past the window of the cabin, very briefly, when Tracy goes to get a cleaver out of the drawer. Dick Warlock, aka my favorite Michael Myers from the original Halloween 2, plus various other roles as stuntman and actor, such as one of the killer robots from Halloween 3 and an agent from the original Firestarter, plays Clayton Weller in the opening scene getting killed by an earlier iteration of Pumpkinhead. Warlock also appeared later was one of the partygoers on the balcony destroyed by Green Goblin in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. George Buck Flower, who plays Mr. Wallace, can be seen as a drunk, hobo, or combo of both in several films, including The Fog, Escape from New York, Back to the Future, and most notably Carpenter's They Live, as a treacherous drifter who willingly sides with that film's alien villains to live a life of wealth and luxury. Peggy Walton Walker, playing Ed Harley's mother, Ellie, had a surprising resemblance to Lance Henriksen. Mayim Bialik, most well known as Amy from The Big Bang Theory, is seen as one of Bunt Wallace's younger sisters. Lita Bro, who plays Tom Harley, can be seen as a drug dealer in RoboCop. Jeff East, who played Chris, also was seen as the teenage Clark Kent from Superman 1978, though he was dubbed by Christopher Reeve. Mushroom the Dog, who played Gypsy, was also seen in Joe Dante's Gremlins as Barney. Leaving Hope, the sign seen on the left of the stairs for the Harley & Son grocery store foreshadows the film's events. The cabin the teens are staying in was filmed at Topanga Canyon, which is also the cabin where the final conflict with Jason takes place in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which effects man Alec Gillis also worked on. Stan Winston's kids, Debbie and Matt, can be seen in the scene where Ed Harley takes Billy's body to the Wallace family asking for haggis. Matt is sitting on the ground with two girls on either side of him as Ed's truck passes by. The silver dollars that Ed Harley pays haggis with were ones Lance actually owned himself, and he claims that after they slipped through the floor into the mud below, they remain there to this day. The dummy of Steve's body falling from the tree during Ed Harley's first psychic seizure was also used in Predator. The hand that comes up during the scene where Pumpkinhead is revived and starts to grow was that of makeup artist Shane Mahan's girlfriend at the time. And finally, Brian Brimmer, who played Bunt, pointed out that when they were filming at night at 4 in the morning, he was hopped up on Jolt Cola and Rolos candy, so the scene where Pumpkinhead finds him in the closet while hiding actually sees him laughing, though it was obviously dubbed over. One other bit of Mo-You-Know trivia. For all you Godzilla fans out there who know that there were 2 eye holes placed within the neck of each Godzilla suit, the same is true of the Pumpkinhead suit for performer Tom Woodruff Jr. Arriving at a time when the slasher film was on its last legs, and as the creature feature was making a welcome return, Pumpkinhead is a credit to the overall talents of Stan Winston, arguably the most iconic cinematic monster maker after Ray Harryhausen, the two of them both being responsible for creating cinema's most memorable monster. Winston stands alone seemingly in the world of effects men turned directors. His own former protégés, Woodruff Jr. and Gillis, branched out into directing following the disappointing handling of their work in the 2011 prequel to The Thing, with Woodruff directing Fire City and Gillis directing Harbinger Down. I haven't seen Fire City yet, but I have seen Harbinger Down, and sadly, I can confirm that their negative reputation is probably deserved. More often than not, effects guys don't have the chops to handle everything across the board when it comes to filmmaking. Stan is the exception, though, because he not only passed the effects responsibilities over to others on his team, but he also had an understanding of acting, having done it himself beforehand, and the results clearly show in his handling of the film's more poignant emotional moments. This extends to the cast of teens, too, who, rather than being a bunch of disposable slasher film victims, each have a bit more life to them than the genre norm. Except for you, Kim. But hey, at least you're a looker, babe. I give Pumpkinhead a 5 out of 5. I'd like to thank my editor, Joey, aka Gojin the Makai Phantom, for his assistance in bringing this ramble to you lovely viewers. You can see me over at his channel when we tackle the first sequel to Pumpkinhead, Pumpkinhead 2 Blood Wings, as part of his annual Spooktober channel event. I think I'll be the good cop in that scenario, but we'll see what happens. Until next time, please like, share, and subscribe, everyone.